And this is something that he's told me as far as I can remember is todo pasa. Everything passes.
Yeah.
So like that's, good times, bad times, stressful times, scary times, everything has a cycle and everything ends. So that's a big thing for me, especially when I'm feeling very overwhelmed or even when I'm feeling way too conceited. I'm like, okay, everything will pass. Like even, I think it helps me keep myself grounded, but also in the moments of like stress and hardship, I'm like, that's just one more thing that will also pass.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. This is going to be a really fun conversation because I can tell that Claudia Scott is my people. Claudia, you work at Startup Junkie. Welcome to the show. But before we get into what you do there, I want to talk about your background, a little bit more about how you became passionate about helping entrepreneurs get funding, know about entrepreneurship and just propelling people forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me and for kind of just carving this space. It's so important to get representation everywhere. A little bit about me. I'm actually originally from Costa Rica. I was born and raised in Costa Rica till I was 19. And I moved to Arkansas with a scholarship to do my undergrad. So that was a big change. I always knew I wanted to go abroad, but it's still a big change for anyone at 18, 19 years old. So I moved to Arkansas in 2013, graduated from college here in 2017, got married, and then decided to do all kinds of things. At first, I wanted to do banking, and then I hated it. And then I took some time off to kind of just recoup and figure out what I really wanted to do. Because I feel like your early 20s are so full of like very life-changing decisions. Then you don't realize where you are. It's like, oh, this is not what I expect. So it took a few months, I think, before COVID and just kind of rearranged my whole life. And I knew what I wanted and what I was good at was helping people. I read a book that always talked about, what you should do is the intersection of what you're passionate about, but also what you're good at. And that little dot is where the sweet spot is. So I'm clearly Hispanic. I'm a woman. I also have Tourette syndrome. So my whole life I have been I have all these like exclusionary checkpoints and check marks. And I've seen how important and meaningful it is for people that have been historically underserved in the past with just a little help from someone, how much they can thrive and succeed. So that's how I decided I wanted to do some nonprofit work. And I've done a little bit of everything in that. And it's going to be 2 years in a couple months that I've been at Startup Junkie. So it's been an amazing, amazing journey.
Wow. Fantastic. And okay, let's back up a little bit. You said, obviously, you're Hispanic, you're Latina, you are passionate about helping people, but you're a woman. You hit all these boxes, and then you also said Tourette's. And I know that from your profile, you're also an advocate. So can you talk a little bit about that? When were you diagnosed? How have you worked with it? And what does your work as an advocate look like?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed when I was in Costa Rica. I think I first presented symptoms when I was like 7 or 8, maybe, but I didn't get my first formal diagnosis until I was 12 or 13. There were a couple of misdiagnoses. Clearly, it was Costa Rica in the early 2000s. If Tourette's was weird here, it was unheard of back then. So my mom did a lot of research with limited resources, and I got my full diagnosis when I was 12, and I've had it, ever since. And I've done all kinds of stuff. I've done videos, I've done support groups. I always tell people, if you know someone with Tourette's, one of the biggest things is connections, like having a community of people that you can ask and kind of just like bounce ideas of like, is this normal? Is this happening just to me or are there others like me out there? So that was a big thing for me. I've done some work with the Tourette Association of America too, but it's crazy. Like sometimes I feel like I check all the boxes, but that would really help just make me even more empathetic to what other people's lifestyles are. And I can confidently say that in my role here at Startup Junkie, as a neurodiverse individual, as a woman, as a Latina, because I have very good conditions and a great work environment, being able to not just successfully do my job, but really thrive. So I'm big into if we get the right conditions in place for whether that's neurodiverse, women, Latinas, we don't even know the capacity that we can reach. So yeah, I'm very, very passionate about it.
I've been having a lot of conversations with different people about accessibility, equity,
Yeah.
everything from accessibility tools for video and audio to a blind blogger to last week I interviewed somebody who is autistic, but he has a podcast and a show. And so and I have ADHD, so I love talking to people who are neurodivergent and can bring their perspective. What are some things that you wish people would do to make sure that as someone with Tourette's, as a community, that you feel included, that you feel respected? What are some things that businesses can do to create that accessibility, or that people, who
Yeah.
might meet somebody could do?
Yeah, I think honestly, and this is very personal to me, other people with Tourette's may feel different, but to me, just that disclosure and that openness to talk about it is super important. One of the things that I've always kind of like experienced and felt like is that disclosure really is my best weapon. If I go into a room and somebody, the comment can be, oh, do you need water? Are you choking? No, I have Tourette's. That's what, but I think that always kind of opens the room into, hey, no, I have Tourette's, I'm all good. And then that kind of sparks a conversation. Usually I would say kind of taking that power away when employers or coworkers ask about my Tourette's the same way they would ask about where I'm from or if I'm married or a normal question, just a normal topic. And that is very personal. I know some people don't like talking about it. But for me, especially in, like the corporate entrepreneurial space, being able to be open about, my needs and my experiences just kind of takes some of the bad power away and gives it more positive power. And it makes it more of a conversation where we can talk about it instead of like a awkward interaction of like, oh, I asked the wrong thing. What did she say? Did she, like that was kind of big for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful. Just to have open and honest conversations, just to ask people, meet them where they are.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like that's important just in every way. Like we don't really notice the barriers that we put on other people just because we're not there. I can't always understand the barriers that my clients, live through because I haven't had the same experience. So sometimes I think it's not even that we are on purpose kind of putting those barriers or putting those like hurdles, but sometimes that is the big thing, is meeting someone in the middle. So, okay, this is what I know. This is what I don't know. How can you help me know more about this topic? So, yeah.
Fantastic. And that does take us to your role. So at Startup Junkie, you are the director of KIVA, and it's NWA, which I researched. So it's not, because I was like, is that Northwest America? But no, it's Northwest Arkansas.
Yes,
correct?
Northwest Arkansas.
And
Yes.
head of inclusive entrepreneurship. So first of all, what is the mission of Startup Junkie?
Yeah. So Startup Junkie is a nonprofit that I think it started, honestly, a long time ago, 2007. It was like, it started first as a consulting company. Then we started our nonprofit arm. So we've been in the Northwest Arkansas area for quite a while. And just at its core, the mission is to democratize access, education, and capital to all small business owners. So really, we have started very hyper local, in Northwest Arkansas, in the cities, but slowly but surely we are growing into more national markets and even international markets. We've actually have a South Korean fuel accelerator here in Northwest Arkansas this last couple of months. So something that really started hyper local is now making its worldwide debut. But I would say at its core, we're just trying to democratize access to our entrepreneurs, whatever that looks like, whether that needs to be capital, education, resources, consulting, whatever that may look like for our entrepreneur. That's where we want to kind of meet them. And KIVA Northwest Arkansas. So KIVA is actually an international nonprofit. So there is, a lot of people have heard of it. And there is this little like almost like KIVA offices all over the United States. And we got our KIVA Northwest Arkansas one in late 2019. So it's going to be almost 4 or 5 years soon. And we did that with a big help from the Walton Family Foundation. So my role with the Northwest Arkansas KIVA Hub is to bring small entrepreneurs, really, because we do small microloans. So anywhere between 1,000 to 15,000. So really massive scalable companies probably won't get a lot out of us, but just it's a crowdfunding model. So none of our business owners pay any interest. They don't pay any fees. We have a match fund with the Walton Family Foundation. So really, at the end of the day, they're only fundraising half of it. And then the other portion of my job is the inclusive entrepreneurship, which is my favorite. So one of the things that I personally noticed when I started doing Kiva is how there is a lot of programming for entrepreneurs. There's a lot of programming for like women entrepreneurs. So they're all siloed, and there is very little programming that includes all inclusive entrepreneurship. So we usually don't think of neurodiverse entrepreneurs. We don't think of veteran entrepreneurs. We don't think, there's API entrepreneurs. Arkansas, funny enough, has the highest amount of Marshallese population outside of Hawaii. So in
Wow.
the United States, Arkansas is the place with the most Marshallese citizens. So that was, for example, a big one that we hadn't really accounted into. So while doing Kiva, we've realized how can we better serve all of these people with the resources that we have. So a story I like to usually tell is that when I started, we were requiring all of our clients to come to the office for their Kiva application. And they had to be, between 8 to 5. And it was usually about a couple hours. And they had to come to the office. They got to schedule a meeting. And then one day, one of my clients came with like 3 kids. 2 were babies. 1 was a toddler. She couldn't find parking. It was during her lunch. And I was like, this is it. Like, we did not budget for that. Just because that's just even starting from a point that everyone has a car or a driver's license, which we know it's not like that. So there was just all these little changes that we never noticed because we don't have those hurdles that we were kind of imposing on our clients. So those are it's kind of what gave way to the inclusive entrepreneurship and inclusive programming. But it started by seeing those barriers that even who I would like to say I'm pretty underserved, can't even see them sometimes. So it's just like, not everyone has a driver's license. Not everyone has childcare. Not everyone can take an hour off to come talk to me in person. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of our mission.
Yeah. So for that, you moved things to digital so that people could apply online. You can figure out other ways to meet them where they are.
Yeah. So what we decided to do is kind of like a 3-option situation. So usually, our first communication usually is email or phone call, and we work with them to get the application ready. When they're ready to submit, that's where we would say, okay, well, you have to come in person for about an hour or 2. So now we say, you're more than welcome to come in person because we do know some people just feel more confident doing this in person. So we give them the option of coming in person and doing it with us. Option 2 is doing it on Zoom, kind of like this, but they share their screen. So I'm able to go through with them every single step. They still feel supported, but they can do it in their home or their work. Or the third option is they do it completely alone and I review it at the end. So we give everyone options to make sure they feel comfortable in at least one of them and try to accommodate, okay, well, tell me how I can help you, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. What about broadband accessibility or somebody who might not have a good laptop?
Yeah, so that actually happens a lot more than I initially even expected. Not even just having a laptop. There's a lot of people that, because of their demographics, sometimes it's age, sometimes we've had some people that just moved to the US from like Guatemala or El Salvador. It's not only that they don't have a laptop, they don't know how to use a laptop. And that doesn't make them any less viable candidates to own a successful business. So I'm able to use my laptop if that ever becomes the case and do it from our office with them. So that usually does, if they don't have a laptop, they can use some of ours, but it does require a little more kind of scheduling because either, you have to be in person, and I have done once or twice they've needed something fixed. They didn't have a laptop. They didn't know how to log in. So I kind of have them on camera or like a meeting, and then I do it myself for them. So that is, especially in Arkansas, we're very like siloed state, like most of our state is food insecure, in a food desert, and that same thing happens with connectivity, Wi-Fi, internet. So we are always trying to find new ways. Ideally, we'll have options for all the kind of scenarios. We're not there right now, but we're definitely working towards it.
Yeah. Fantastic. What is a typical case of somebody who wants to start a business? Like, what kind of businesses are they starting?
We have so many. I think we've done about 150 loans in the last 4 years. And out of those, and I'm not exactly sure on the percentage, but I think 88 of all of our loans have been women-owned businesses. So that's amazing. And out of that, I think 95% have been a women or identified as a minority in some way. So we're definitely, that's our niche market. Anyone can apply for a KIVA loan. We'll help anyone get a KIVA loan, but we definitely want to be that first step for people that don't have other options. So with the KIVA program, I don't have to ask for like citizenship proof. There's a lot of things that we're able to kind of work around so that we can serve a lot of our population. So we've had some people, one of my favorite stories, and I always tell her story, and I probably should change it, but I love her. She's a mom who had lost her job during COVID. She was a teacher. And she was like, I've always wanted to have a candy store, a candy factory. I want to make my own candy. I have all these recipes from my mom and my grandma, and this is what I want to do. This just happened to me, so it seems like the perfect time. So she started it. She even had a brick and mortar. She hadn't done much research on like entrepreneurial support organizations in the area. So a few months in, the whole shipping and like logistics issues were happening. She couldn't deliver all of her ingredients in time. And she's like, okay, I need to kind of pivot into more of an online model. And that's when she found us. So she found us in her transition of like going back to, pivot number 3, trying to find a way to get her business plan, to get kind of like the tools that she needed to make this stuff at home. And we were able to not only, and that's one of my favorite things about Startup Junkie, because we were able to give her the capital, of course, but we're also are able to give her kind of like an array of services. So Startup Junkie, we can do consulting, we can do mentoring, we can do, if somebody comes to us and says, my biggest problem is social media. So we can do an info session or a lunch and learn just on social media. So it really is, you can need capital and we can help you with that, but you don't have to come to us for capital. Or, you can contact me because you think you need a loan, and then halfway through you realize, actually, all I wanted was your consulting services, and that's totally fine. So with her, we were able to give her not only the capital to buy her, new materials and new like equipment, but we were able to give her some mentoring, and we were able to give her some like invitations to events. And she's grown into one of our like dearest companies in our area in Northwest Arkansas. So that's one of my favorites, just because I feel like she embodies the entrepreneurial spirit so well. She pivoted so many times, and she was still like, this is what I want to do. I just need to keep changing until it works. And it finally did. So she's also a single mom. She's a woman-owned business. So she's one of my absolute favorites. And I always bring her up. And then recently we actually did our first non-binary loan as well. So I was very excited about that one. Our borrower, Meg, has started this business called the Library Vintage. I think that's right. I get it confused between the Library Vintage or the Library Vintage. And it's basically, and this is what I told them, almost like Rent the Runway, but local. So Meg has this actual space with clothes, and you do like a subscription. It's like $20, and then you can change 4 or 5 items a week. They take care of all of like the washing and the dry clean. So you come in, you find your outfits for the week, and then you exchange them the next week. So like there's an array of businesses and services, and we've had some cool ones, we've had some apps, and we've had some like more tech enabled ones, but I would say we really get a little bit of everything.
Yeah, fantastic. And so it is a mix of online and brick and mortar.
Yes, it definitely is. I would like to actually do I would like to look up what our percentage is. I don't know that, but that's really interesting. I would probably say maybe 50-50. We do get a lot of like food trucks or mobile businesses. So some of them are in there too, but yeah, definitely just a variety of them.
Fantastic. And so you mentioned that KIVA has hubs throughout the United States. I'm familiar with donating on the international side, but I love the fact that they have some in the Americas as well. In terms of your Startup Junkie, other services, are those accessible to people throughout the United States or globally? Is that primarily Arkansas? Because you also talked about an initiative with South Korea.
Yeah. So honestly, I always say this, we will take anyone. Like if you schedule a Calendly with me and you live in North Dakota and you just start kind of just wanting to do some consulting or some mentoring, or I'll do it and we will all do it. There was one time, I'm still not sure what happened, but it was over kind of like a weekend. We'd sent out a press release, and between that Friday or Thursday and Sunday, I got like 20 phone calls from people all over the US. It was like Chicago, Utah, Arizona, California, asking for Kiva loans. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not the person for you, but I will take you to the right person. So we'll always take, I would say we definitely started hyper local, but we're definitely now nationwide. Some of our metrics and some of our stakeholders are definitely, like the city of Fayetteville or like local chambers. But we definitely just take, we're always in the mood for world domination, is what my boss says. Startup junkie everywhere. So
fantastic. And how did the South Korean Accelerator come to be?
Yeah. So we've had a kind of like a designated person for all of our Southeast Asia Asia relationships. He is from South Korea, but he's also from Arkansas. His parents live here. So he already had kind of that established. And then there was some contracts with the South Korean government that allowed that to happen. So they did, I think it was 2 months of sessions in South Korea, kind of just getting ready. And then they came here for 2 months, met some people that were interested in their products. They did demo dates. They did pitch competitions. So it really is just about kind of finding the right opportunities. My goal next is to have something similar with Costa Rica. So that's just, a cross-finger idea that I would love to have. But definitely we're open to any expansion and any client.
What do you think is the biggest impact this work has made on you?
That's such a big question. Because I am a big fan of a job that changes your life. Like I'm a big person on life-work balance. I'm trying to say that instead of work-life balance. I'm big on life-work balance, but I am also very job-oriented. I like my career. I like work, but I also don't want to be a workaholic. So kind of, to me, finding that line, that's why it was so important to get to that intersection of it's not something that is paying the bills, but it's also something I'm passionate about. I remember when I was in banking a lot, I just kind of felt like a hamster. I was just like doing this work for no reason, and it's impacting no one around me. So one of the big things that I remember writing in early 2019, 2020 on my little notes of what do I want to do with the rest of my life was, I want to do something where I can almost touch the impact of what I'm making. Like that was a big thing for me. I want it to be something tangible in whatever form that may look like, but I want it to be impactful. And that's what this job has really given me. Not only am I able to look at businesses now and I'm like, oh my God, we gave them a loan 2-3 years ago and look at them growing, or look at them coming for their second loans. I think it's made me a lot more empathetic to other people, finally realizing that I even put so many barriers without noticing. It kind of just always being in that that mindset of we can always do better. We do a good job. We try to erase barriers. I like, to believe that because I am a minority in many ways, I don't have those biases, but understanding that I still do because I'm full of privilege was very important to me. And just, I think it's also taught me a lot of grace, and not just grace like with ourselves, but with each other. I think we're in such a fast-paced world, which is fun and it's great, but we want everything now, and we want it good, and we want it perfect on the first try. And I think what that's cost us is that it can't just, we stop giving grace to other people, and we stop giving grace to ourselves too. And I feel like that this job has been great at me being able to sometimes just take a step back and say, okay, I gotta take it chill and like be nicer to myself and be nicer to others. So there's numerous reasons why this job has changed my life, but I would say being able to see almost like tangible impact of what I do every day has been the most life-changing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's such a good point. We really do have to live in that space that is like your Venn diagram or ikigai, right? Where you have the skill set, you have this passion, and you can marry it together to not only make money, but also to feel like you're putting good into the world and that you feel good every day when you wake up and you're so excited. I totally understand that.
No, and I remember, I think especially my early 20s, if you would have asked me what I wanted to do, I was like, make money. I want to be rich. And I was 22. So clearly that was my answer. And I think it was so, so important and meaningful to me to take that time and actually list all the things I'm passionate, all the things that I know I'm good at, because it also gave me the confidence to be like, okay, I'm good at things. I'm good at all these things. And sometimes it's kind of hard to like know those or be able to say like, oh, I'm great at this three things, because you don't want to seem conceited, but being able to actually put it down and kind of work on yourself was very helpful to me. And that sweet spot, and I don't think clearly it's a journey, not a destination. So like the sweet spot is always changing and it's kind of like going back and forth, but always kind of working towards being that balance in like your personal and your professional life. I think that's just really the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I'm just fascinated by what Startup Junkie does. And I love the fact that it is no cost service to entrepreneurs, because there are
That
other
is
services
okay.
out there, but a lot of times people don't know how to find the right resources, or they might get
Yeah.
help once they can get to a website, but if they can't get to the website, right?
And that's a big thing. Like a lot of people sometimes, Kiva, we're very, very happy because it almost has its own marketing. It's been around for so long. Most people know about it. But sometimes when I've run into people that they have no idea what Kiva is, they have no idea what Startup Junkie is. So you tell them, and the first thing is, okay, but what's the catch? And I don't even get mad when they ask me that, because I would ask the same thing. Okay, but when are you going to charge me? When are you going to, and sometimes it is hard, especially because we've had a lot of clients that have been burnt out in the past by something like that. So the question is usually, okay, but what do you get from this? And some people get like, they're like, okay, but how do you make money? But how do you get paid? I'm like, okay, we are not, there are some resources available that are at no cost. And I always, when I meet with clients, I always tell them, clearly doing the research is already something that we're privileged on, that, is based on Wi-Fi and a laptop and your ability to actually look stuff up in English. Mm-hmm. But I would definitely say that, being able to find ESOs in the area is very, very important. I tried to start a company years ago, right between that banking, COVID, change of career moment, because I realized, like you were mentioned in the beginning, a lot of our multimedia content either doesn't have subtitles or it's not translated. So if you're like hard of hearing or if you don't speak the language, you kind of lose access to 80% of like videos and content out there. So we started doing that. And it was fairly successful for a few months, but I had no idea what resources were in my community. I just moved to this area of Arkansas, had just gotten married, no friends, right out of college. And I strongly believe that was my make it or break it. Like I could not find the resources. And I'm a college educated. I know how to use a laptop, and I still couldn't find it. And that really is what I would say ultimately led me to being like, maybe this is not for me. And that is the catalyst. So I think that's the biggest thing for us, or at least in my kind of wing of Startup Junkie right now, is how do we get this information to the people that can't or won't look us up on the internet? Or how do we get this to the people that don't have service? Or, like farmers, like we do, one of our big areas is, for Kiva loans and like inclusive entrepreneurship is our agricultural wing. And they're out there. They're not always on social media and on TikTok and so we've been very, very lucky that we now have some partnerships with like agriculturals and farm like institutions in Northwest Arkansas. But that was one of our biggest goals. Like, how do we get to this people that won't find us any other way? Like another big one is, and this one is one that I can confidently say we are not successful in Kiva, Northwest Arkansas just yet. But with Kiva, you can get a loan if you've had a criminal conviction in the past. As long as it's not financial or violent, you can still apply for a loan. And we've had some people that have found us through other ways, and then they do disclose they have a criminal conviction. And we're like, that's fine, go ahead. But one of the big things is, how do we get that nugget of information to the people that have had a criminal conviction? Because most of the times they just don't know. They don't think it's available for them, so they don't look it up. So that's one that we're working on. But there's always ways to improve.
Yeah. Well, how do you find the farmer who really needs a microloan? What are some of the techniques that you're using? Because most people, right, have moved to digital media, digital marketing, but that's to your point, it's not always a viable solution for everybody.
I think so, especially we have a partnership with the Center for Arkansas Farm and Food, which is about 20 minutes from our office. So we make a point to speak to they have 6-month cohorts, I believe. So we speak to their class at least twice a year. And then we try to always join them when they have a happy hour event, just because that, they may not be the people in the class, but some people kind of joining there or like friends or family. And then my next step, hopefully in the spring, is to actually have a booth like the farmers market or some of our, we're a very rural and agricultural area. And I still think that there's no marketing like sitting down for 6 hours with a bunch of pamphlets. Ultimately, that's still very, very successful. So that's kind of like our next step for our farmers. But we've had this year, we've actually increased a lot our farmers, and then our Asian American Pacific Islander also. I think when I came in 2 years ago, it was like maybe 3% of borrowers. Now we're up to like 13%. It was a massive increase. So that's definitely it. And then for our population with some sort of criminal past, we are actually in the process of getting a partnership with someone who has sort of like a business course with people that have been in jail or and so we're hoping to actually be able to go in their classes and say, hey, this could be you. We're definitely looking for ways to improve on that.
Nice. And in terms of Kiva loans,
yeah,
I think most people have probably heard of them, but maybe didn't know they were accessible to small businesses in the U.S. Yeah. Can you talk about that process? Because particularly if somebody is in Northwest Arkansas and they are approved to go into the Kiva ecosystem,
yes,
does it only show up in one subset? Does it show up on the whole Kiva website so people can donate from anywhere?
Yeah, so it should all show up on the website. So when people go to kiva.org, they'll be able to kind of filter through, I think, first is the whole world. So it says like Africa, Central America, South America, North America. So if they go to North America, all of Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. loans will be on there. Oh. So we've actually had, I would say, a big increase on U.S. loans in the last year, like great turnout. So yeah, it's definitely the same way if you're looking to contribute, if you're looking to actually get a loan or get more information, you don't know like your nearest hub, you can also look that up on the website, or you can email, I think it's contacts@kiva.org, contact us, but I'd have to double check on that. Usually you can email me and wherever you are, and I will get you to the right person. So there's hubs in almost every state. I think we recently had someone from Joplin, Missouri, which is on like an hour or two away from where we are. And she came to Startup Junkie for consulting, was looking for some capital, got referred to me. That's technically outside our area. But when talking to Kiva US about it, there's no hub close to this person. There was nobody, like they could do it remotely. If there's no hub, you just deal directly with Kiva US. But then you're kind of missing that like personalized one-on-one like help and like walkthrough. So we're like, well, we don't mind to help her if you guys are okay with that. So we're able to kind of just work around some of the things too. So I would say definitely. We also have a podcast. I always forget I'm on a podcast and I always forget to talk about it. We've had a podcast for, like 10 years. It's called the Startup Junkies podcast. And then in the last year, I decided to start the Startup Junkies en Español podcast. Now it has a name. It's called Querido Emprendedor, which just means dear entrepreneur. So this just kind of was born out of like, we knew how successful our English podcast was, but we also knew the array of Spanish-speaking business and business owners, at least in our area and beyond, that are ready to tell their story, that have phenomenal stories, but they just didn't have a platform or they didn't feel comfortable enough to speak in English for 40 minutes. So we've started that. I think it's going to be about a year and a few months, and it's done amazing. So we're always looking to, any Hispanic entrepreneurs, any entrepreneurs that want to be on the podcast, just contact us.
Fantastic. And what's the easiest place for people to find you, Claudia? Should they just go to the Startup Junkie website?
Yeah, so the Startup Junkie website should have all of like myself and all my coworkers, emails and Calendly links if you want to schedule a meeting. We do have Kiva Northwest Arkansas and Startup Junkie both. They have their own website and social media. And I personally am also on all the social media as Claudia Scott. So I'm very accessible, and I always tell people, feel free, like The craziest friendships I've had have been somebody DMing me on Instagram and saying, I have Tourette's too. Can we talk? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I would say, and even also in an entrepreneurial space, kind of taking that leap of faith and like messaging someone, most of the people I would say are willing to be helpful and willing to like give you 30 minutes of their time. So just kind of put yourself out there.
Yeah, fantastic. And the last question I like to ask is, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, verse, family motto, words that keep you going every day?
Yes. So it's actually, this is something that my dad has always told me. And I actually got it tattooed a year ago. And he reminded me of it a couple of days ago. I was actually super sick this weekend. And I texted him and I was like, I'm just really, I'm in pain. And this is something that he's told me as far as I can remember is todo pasa. Everything passes.
Yeah.
So like that's, good times, bad times, stressful times, scary times, everything has a cycle and everything ends. So that's a big thing for me, especially when I'm feeling very overwhelmed or even when I'm feeling way too conceited. I'm like, okay, everything will pass. Like even, I think it helps me keep myself grounded, but also in the moments of like stress and hardship, I'm like, that's just one more thing that will also pass. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah. Fantastic. This has been a really fun conversation. I've just really enjoyed having you on to talk about Startup Junkie, KIVA, Tourette's, your background, because it's a common story, I think, of we all have something inside of us we want to do. Many of us want to be entrepreneurs. And so how do you do that? And how do you find the support system that will help you achieve your dream?
It is hard. And I always tell people it is one of the most overwhelming career paths. And that's why you should always lean as much as you can on community partners like us.
Yeah, fantastic.
But thank you so much for making this space for me.
Of course. And thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to this episode. I'll be back again with another amazing guest to share their story, their journey, and some tips and tricks that will help you in your life and your business every day. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.